Well, I'm so glad we get to have this conversation. Always a pleasure to discuss issues of the most important aspects of NATO. Hello, my name is Robert Baines. I am the president and CEO of the NATO Association of Canada. We are a charitable NGO dedicated to informing Canadians about the value of security and the importance of NATO. More and more every day, we're hearing about the unpredictability of the world around us. Our friends, our adversaries are less predictable than they once were. That makes NATO and so many other multilateral organizations all the more important for Canada to double down on. NATO is based on a very simple idea that an attack upon one is an attack upon all. These are a group of sovereign nations that have banded together to maintain peace through strength, through protecting one another, just like a hockey team. Nobody picks a fight with a hockey team. And if they do, we'll be able to handle ourselves. That's the whole idea of NATO. And it is the best way of maintaining peace that has come up with since the end of the Second World War. We realized in the 30s that it's very easy for countries to say they will protect something and then reassess once an actual war breaks out. We needed something that was more concrete, where every NATO member has dedicated itself to protect every other NATO member. And that's what Canada has dedicated itself to. And that's why we need to discuss it and make sure that all Canadians realize the importance of security. And the fact that our defense budget supposed to be at 2% of GDP, it's there not just for ourselves, but to maintain the peace that was so hard won after the Second World War. And that is something that the NATO Association continues to discuss. And we want to make sure that you're part of the conversation week after week. So please, if you aren't already, please do follow us on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and of course here on YouTube. We are a great community, and please do consider membership as well so that you can attend our events in person and continue the conversation. It's essential that everybody that's part of our community shows it to their friends, to their family, to those at their workplaces, because everybody has to be a part of this conversation. We are no longer an island. We are part of a wider story. And if we don't write our own part, somebody else will. So with that, I did want to make sure that I get a chance to introduce our three fine moderators for taking us through our discussion with His Excellency, the Ambassador of Lithuania to Canada. Lithuania is one of the most important partners of Canada, being part of that great tripartite Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia bloc that we have been so strong about. And of course, Canada's own enhanced forward presence is brother to another enhanced forward presence in Lithuania. So there's lots of discussion and lots of strength between the two countries. And it's a pleasure, Ambassador, to have you here. But our three moderators are Antalya, James, and Mary. They will be taking His Excellency through a discussion. And if you do have any questions, please make sure that you put them in the YouTube question block there, and we'll try to get them as much as possible. So Antalya, James, and Mary, please take it away. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Robert, for the kind introduction. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our diplomatic series exploring Canada's relation with its NATO allies and partners in an ever-changing global security environment. My name is Antalya Papatia, and I'm a research analyst with the NATO Association of Canada.
Hello, everyone. My name is James Lawtons, and I am an engagement coordinator with the NATO Association of Canada.
And good morning, everyone. So I am Marie Gay, and I am a social media coordinator with the NATO Association of Canada.
As previously mentioned, and why you're all here, we are going to be discussing Lithuania's role in NATO. The discussion around Lithuania-NATO relations is particularly timely as the Baltic state remains a key player in regional security amid ever-growing threats from Russia. As a frontline NATO member, Lithuania has strengthened its defense capabilities, advocated for a stronger allied presence, and played a crucial role in supporting Ukraine. We will explore significant issues today with His Excellency Egidijus Meilūnas. But before we begin the ambassador's opening statements, I would like to go over his brief bio for our audience. Ambassador Egidijus Meilūnas has served as Lithuania's ambassador to Canada since September 2024. Prior to that, most recently, he was a Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Lithuania. Ambassador Meilūnas graduated from Vilnius University with a diploma in Paediatrics in 1988 and a master's degree in law in 2001. At the beginning of his career, he worked at the university and at the press bureau of the government of Lithuania. Since 1992, he joined the Lithuanian Diplomatic Service, where he has worked as a diplomatic advisor to the President, General Inspector of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs, and has represented Lithuania as ambassador in Poland, Japan, Ireland, and as non-resident ambassador in Australia, New Zealand, the Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, and ASEAN organizations. On January 16, 2025, the Ambassador of the Republic of Lithuania to Canada, Egidijus Meilūnas, presented letters of credence to the Governor General of Canada. Ambassador, we are so grateful to have you here today. And before we proceed to our questions, we would like to invite you to have some opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for your kind introduction, and thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you today. It's truly a pleasure and honor to speak with the NATO Association of Canada, an organization I believe has earned great respect for its work in promoting knowledge and understanding of NATO's importance. And Mr. President, I fully subscribe to your introductory words you said about NATO's importance today. And to start, I would like to briefly outline Lithuania's path to NATO membership. As we all know, this organization, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, is the most effective collective defense alliance in history, providing unparalleled security for its member states. And when NATO was founded more than 75 years ago in 1949, it was established to safeguard its members against Russia. At that time, we said Soviet Union, but it was the same Russia, just with different names. And it's very important to understand that last 300-400 years, Russia didn't change. It could change its name, but nature as an autocratic, aggressive country never changed. So naturally, if Lithuania was a free country at that time, it would have sought to join NATO from its very outset. But unfortunately, we were occupied by Russia at that time. And that was, I should tell you, very tragic and brutal occupation. As a result, our country, our nation, lost more than 800,000 people, over a quarter of its population. Tens of thousands were brutally killed by Russians. Hundreds of thousands were deported to Siberia, and many more fled the country in search of freedom. One of the reasons why Russia was able to occupy Lithuania and other Baltic states, and as well as suppress other nations across Eastern and Central Europe, was the policy of appeasement towards Russian dictator Stalin at Yalta Conference in February 1945, exactly 80 years ago. Russia deceived its Western partners at that time, as it always does, and the nations of Eastern and Central Europe, my country, my nation, including, paid a terrible price. I am sorry for the lengthy historical introduction, but I firmly believe that understanding history is essential in understanding current events, current developments, and ensuring that we do not repeat past mistakes. For Lithuania, the Russian occupation in 1945 was the third such occupation in nearly 2 centuries. just two dramatic figures. Taking class 230 years of Lithuania's history, more than 170 years we were occupied by Russians. And history has taught us a very painful lesson. As I said, Russia has never changed. It has always sought to dominate and suppress other sovereign nations. So, therefore, when we regained our freedom in 1990, just yesterday, we marked the 35th anniversary of that momentous event. One of our nation's key strategic goals was to ensure our future security. It's fully understandable. But we saw the only one real way to achieve this, by joining NATO, the world's most effective collective defense alliance. And I remember personally very clearly that some of our friends and partners at that time cautioned us that it was like an impossible mission. They said that NATO membership probably was unrealistic because it would, I quote, escalate tensions with Russia, and probably that it would be better to remain a neutral country or maybe rely on other international security mechanisms. However, as I said, given our historic experience and the lessons we learned from the past, we have determined to pursue NATO membership. In January 1994, we formally submitted our application to join the alliance, and just a few weeks later, we joined the NATO Partnership for Peace program. We worked hard alongside other applicant countries to build our national military capabilities, strengthen cooperation with NATO partners, and demonstrate that we could contribute to the alliance security. Even before becoming a full-fledged member, we actively participated in NATO-led peacekeeping and humanitarian operations in the Balkans and Iraq. And finally, in April 2004, 21 years ago, along with 6 other countries, Lithuania became a full-fledged NATO member. Since joining 2 decades ago, Lithuania has been an active and contributing member of the alliance. We have actively participated in NATO-led missions and operations in the Balkans, Afghanistan, Iraq, and beyond. We led the provincial reconstruction team in Gore, Afghanistan, and we continue to contribute to NATO missions and operations. In terms of defense spending, that is probably today an important issue to discuss. We have steadily increased our defense expenditures, reaching 3.11% of GDP last year and aiming for almost 4% this year. We have also enhanced our national military capabilities, and we are closely working with our allies to strengthen security of the NATO eastern flank. NATO multinational battle group, which currently stations in Lithuania, is under German leadership, and we are preparing for deployment of German brigade in Lithuania by 2027. And now, as we look forward towards the future, we face a new and grave set of security challenges. Russia's brutal aggression against Ukraine, alongside the rise of other authoritarian regimes, poses a direct threat not only to Ukraine but to all NATO allies. At the last 3 NATO summits, probably you know very well, in Madrid, Vilnius, and Washington, Russia was clearly identified as the most significant and immediate threat to ally security, threat to all 32 NATO members. And moreover, at the Washington summit, NATO underscored China's malign role as a decisive enabler of Russia's war against Ukraine and recognized China's growing global ambitions as, I quote, a challenge to our security and values. North Korea and Iran are also active contributors to this global instability, further compounding the threats we face. In summary, Russia and other autocratic regimes are aligning their efforts against us, democratic global community, aiming to dismantle the rules-based international order that has long protected our way of life. So we must abandon any illusions that an appeasement can change Russia's aggressive intentions. The only effective response is to further strengthen NATO and enhance our collective defense capabilities. I would like to quote our Minister of Defense, Mrs. Shakaliene, who has recently said, I quote, "We need less talk and more action." We must also continue to enhance our support for Ukraine and accept finally Ukraine into NATO. Listen, Ukraine is not just fighting for its own freedom, but for ours as well. And it's effectively defending us against the most significant and direct threat. So I have no doubt that future Ukraine's membership in NATO would be a tremendous asset to the alliance and ally security. And last but not least, it is critical that we strengthen partnerships with like-minded countries, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region. It's no doubt that security of the transatlantic area and the Indo-Pacific are strongly interlinked. So we must work closely with like-minded countries to ensure our safe future. That concludes my introduction, and now I would be more than happy to discuss with you.
I wanted to thank you, Ambassador, for your opening remarks. So our first question to you, Ambassador Meilūnas, is, as Natalia mentioned, you have recently assumed your role as Lithuania's ambassador to Canada, so just this September. And we wanted to ask, like, you're bringing this wealth of experience from your previous diplomatic postings, and you've had different postings across the world, including to other Commonwealth countries, such as New Zealand or Australia. So my question to you is, as you embark on your new tenure as ambassador to Canada, what are your primary objectives, and how do you plan to advance the Lithuanian-Canadian relationship during your service?
Thank you very much. Great question. And in the beginning, I would like to say that I am really deeply honored to have an opportunity to represent my country in Canada, a country which we value not only as an important partner, like-minded nation and ally, but is very important. We value Canada also as a true friend. And you know, I don't agree with those who claim, even nowadays, that international relations are based solely on interests rather than friendship. Our Lithuanian experience has shown that, on contrary, that values-driven, friendship-based policy is the most pragmatic approach, contrary to interest-based, so-called realpolitik, which ultimately leads to losses. That is our dramatic experience. And the history of our bilateral Lithuania-Canada relations, I believe, is the best proof that friendship matters in international relations. Canada never recognized the Soviet occupation of Lithuania and the other two Baltic states, and welcomed tens of thousands of refugees who fled Russian occupation. They found home in free and democratic Canada. They were lucky. Canada was among the first countries to recognize Lithuania's re-established independence 35 years ago and strongly supported us in building a modern state. And today we enjoy very active and productive cooperation with Canada in various fields, and we see tremendous potential for further growth. During my tenure in Canada, I will work diligently to expand our cooperation, first of all, in security and defense area, enhance our economic, trade, and technological partnerships, to strengthen EU-Canada ties, and promote more active people-to-people connections. As you might know, we have a strong Lithuanian community in Canada, of which I am very proud. Their contributions greatly enrich our bilateral relations, and I look forward to working closely with them to bring our two nations even closer together.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Your Excellency, the next question comes from me. Both Lithuania and Canada have expressed concerns over security in the Arctic region, especially regarding the increasing influence of Russia and China. In a recent meeting, Lithuanian Foreign Minister Kęstutis Budrys highlighted the importance of transatlantic cooperation in the Arctic and on Arctic security, and emphasized Canada's pivotal role in this area. Given the shared concerns about our Arctic security, how do you envision Lithuania and Canada collaborating to enhance stability and address emerging challenges in the region?
Thank you for your question, and let me first reiterate that the Arctic region you mentioned is yet another example of malicious activities and coordinated efforts by autocratic regimes, primarily Russia and China. The war against Ukraine, aggressive actions in Indo-Pacific and Africa, and their ambitions to dominate the Arctic pose a real threat to all of us. Therefore, although Lithuania is not strictly an Arctic country, we are ready to contribute to the efforts of Canada and other like-minded nations to ensure that Arctic region remains as stable, prosperous, and secure. We are ready to cooperate in this regard also with other Nordic and Baltic countries. And just for your information, we have already initiated discussions with our Canadian colleagues on areas where Lithuania's participation could be valuable. And I think that one of such areas could be technological cooperation, particularly the adaptation of defense technologies in this Arctic region.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your answer to that question. Our next question is, Canada has demonstrated its commitment to Baltic security through its leadership of NATO's Enhanced Forward Presence battle group in Latvia and its participation in regional military exercises. Lithuania, in turn, has been a key player in strengthening NATO's eastern flank. Given the growing importance of deterrence and collective defense, how do you see the potential for deeper cooperation between Canada and Lithuania in areas such as military training, cyber defense, or intellectual sharing? And are there specific projects or initiatives you believe could benefit from increased Canadian involvement? Thank you.
Thank you again for your great question. And as I already mentioned, one of my objectives is to deepen and strengthen our defense and military cooperation with Canada, as we see really great potential. As NATO partners, we have already been working together to enhance security in the Euro-Atlantic region, particularly on the alliance's eastern flank. It's no doubt that we highly value Canada's significant contributions to strengthening security in our region, Baltic region, leading NATO's enhanced forward presence in Latvia, sending officers to NATO Force Integration Unit in Lithuania, and most notably, as you already mentioned, the planned deployment of Canadian Brigade in Latvia. In February, we had a very productive meeting in Vancouver between the Lithuanian and Canadian chiefs of defense, where they discussed new possibilities for bilateral cooperation, including military training. Cybersecurity, I fully agree, and cybersecurity and cyber defense are also crucial and promising areas of cooperation, as our both countries, Lithuania and Canada, have extensive expertise in addressing cybersecurity challenges. Another key goal is to connect Lithuanian and Canadian defense industries. In May, we will host in Lithuania, in our capital city Vilnius, the Baltic Miltech Summit, an event aimed at fostering new and existing synergies between the private and public sectors, NATO and EU policymakers, industrial leaders, and research institutions in the development and application of cutting-edge military technologies, which is absolutely crucial nowadays. We expect Canadian participants at this event as well. Additionally, in May, here in Canada, we will attend the Ottawa Defense Trade Show, CANSEC, organized by the Canadian Association of Defense and Security Industries, CATSI, where we look forward to further strengthening Lithuania-Canada defense cooperation. I had a very productive meeting with the leaders of CATSI, so we agreed to work together to connect, as I mentioned, Lithuanian and Canadian defense representative of defense industries.
Thank you for your answer. The next question goes to me. So, as I'm sure you know, there's been within the Baltic Sea numerous incidents relating to undersea wire cutting by hostile powers such as Russia. And in recent years, Lithuania, as well as other Baltic states, have been frequently targeted by Russian cyber operations and disinformation campaign with attacks on like critical infrastructure, government institution, and therefore really endangering public trust. These incidents have obviously caused great concern among NATO countries. And my question is, in your perspective, how does Lithuania assess the current and emerging threats posed by Russia? What strategic measures should be prioritized by Western democracies to counter these challenges that are becoming even more recurrent?
Yeah, thank you again. Very good question. And I would like to answer just to mentioning you mentioned about cyber operations and disinformation campaigns organized by Russia. So it's not only Lithuania or other Baltic countries are attacked, but as I said, Russia poses a huge security threat to all allies, to all 32 member states. So speaking about Lithuania's experience, indeed in Lithuania we have developed a very effective cyber security system, and one of these key elements of the system is synergy between civilian and military actors. Our National Cyber Security Center is an organization under the Ministry of National Defense responsible for national level cybersecurity policy and supporting the developments of cyber defense capabilities within public administration. And I would like also to mention that recently, in response to malicious activities by Russia, China, and other autocratic regimes in cyberspace, the Cyber Defense Command of the Lithuanian Armed Forces was established. It launched its activities on 1st of January 2025. In this regard, we also cooperate closely with NATO allies, and we consider Canada as a very important partner. And in my view, there are many areas for potential enhanced cooperation, including but not limited to, for example, joint crisis management task forces, joint projects to develop AI-based cyber defense tools, securing cloud infrastructure, cyber protection of underwater infrastructure, and also conducting joint cyber security exercises.
Thank you so much for your answer to that question, Ambassador. Our next one is quite timely. In 2023, former NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said, "Transatlantic and Indo-Pacific security is deeply interconnected. What happens in this region matters to NATO, and what happens in Europe matters to the Indo-Pacific." Our question for you, ambassadors, how should Europe and the Indo-Pacific allies work together to address shared security challenges across these regions, and what steps can be taken to strengthen strategic cooperation? Thank you.
Well, thank you for your question. I fully subscribe to your words. You said it's very timely question. Yes, indeed, former Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, 2 years ago, it was January 2023, said very clearly that security of transatlantic region and Indo-Pacific region are very strongly linked. And what we see, last 3 years when Russia attacked Ukraine in February 2022, I believe China immediately started to support, not in military terms, but economically and in other means, they started to support Russia. And as I mentioned already last year at the Washington NATO summit, China was named as key enabler of Russia's war against Ukraine. It's clear. It's, I believe, clear to us that China is very closely watching what is going on, developments, how this situation is going to develop. And for me, it's 100% clear. If Russia wins in Ukraine, that would encourage China to be even more aggressive in Indo-Pacific region. As you know, China declares that it would like to, I quote, peacefully unite with Taiwan, but we don't see any peaceful attempts of China. On the contrary, they are threatening Taiwanese people, sending fighters and military ships, blocking Taiwan Strait. It's of course not acceptable, and that again is very important to stop Russia in Ukraine. And that would send signal also to China that aggressive behavior against neighbors, against other nations, any attempts to forcefully change borders is not acceptable. So that's why we have to work closely with Indo-Pacific partners like Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand. And I believe last 3 NATO summits in Madrid, Vilnius, and Washington were the first NATO summits where AP4 or Indo-Pacific partners were invited for comprehensive discussions on possibilities to expand our cooperation between NATO allies and Indo-Pacific countries, and we need to continue in this direction.
Thank you, Ambassador. That's very insightful. You mentioned in your opening remarks that Lithuania at the moment is spending 3.11% of GDP towards defense spending, already well surpassing the 2% NATO target. However, in response to the growing threat of Russian aggression, Lithuania has pledged to significantly increase its defense budget to 5 to 6%. That's accurate, correct? Starting in 2026. And I want to ask, this commitment makes Lithuania the first NATO member to aim for the 5% goal as called by current US President Donald Trump. Given this incredibly ambitious approach and current success in surpassing the 2% marker, what message would you send to Canadian policymakers regarding the importance of sustained investment in defense and deterrence? And do you think there's an opportunity for collaboration there of a joint venture to maybe be a model for other NATO nations?
Thank you again for your great question. Today I would like to send only one message to Canadian policymakers, and this message sounds like this. Thank you very much for Canada's invaluable contribution to the security of the Baltic region, NATO eastern flank. We are ready to enhance cooperation with you. That's my message. With regard to defense expenditures, I would like to present some figures to you. As it was already mentioned, last year we allocated 3.11% of GDP to defense. And this year our goal is to reach almost 4%. As you rightly pointed out, the decision has been already taken to move towards 5 or even 6% by 2030. But regarding NATO defense expenditures, I believe it's very important to emphasize two key points. First, with regard to 2% expenditures. 2% benchmark is a NATO guideline. As you know, it was established in 2014 at the NATO summit in Wales, and it was agreed upon to help allies to meet NATO capability targets and to address capability shortfalls. However, the security situation has changed significantly since 2014, as we already discussed it, and continues to evolve rapidly. So we will see what decisions on defense expenditures and maybe new percentage guidelines are agreed upon NATO leaders at the next NATO summit in The Hague in June. But second important point is that decisions on defense budget should not be based only on general guidelines, but also on a comprehensive assessment of national security threats. It's very important to understand an adversary's true intentions, true long-term goals. It's crucial. Let me give you an example concerning threat posed by Russia. Many were shocked when Russia first attacked Ukraine in 2014, and again when it launched its full-scale invasion in 2014. Many people still believe that Russia is, they say, unpredictable. But however, this aggression was neither spontaneous nor unpredictable. And now I would like to present you an excerpt from a textbook used in, and still it's used in Russian military academies, higher military schools. Title of this textbook is Foundations of Geopolitics. It was first time published in 1997. 1997, 17 years before Russia's first attack on Ukraine. So now a quote on Ukraine. The Ukrainian problem is the main and most serious problem facing Moscow. The further existence of a unitary Ukraine is unacceptable. This territory should be divided into several zones corresponding to the gamut of geopolitical and ethno-cultural realities. 1997 textbook for future Russian military people, officers. The author of this book, Alexander Dugin, is one of the architects of the, I call it, fascist ideology known as the Russian wall. And he personally has openly called for the killing of Ukrainians during discussion with his students. So Russian officers and soldiers, now you can understand why they are so brutal in Russia, murdering innocent Ukrainian civilians. They were taught and encouraged to do so under this so-called doctrine. If you want insight into Russia's medium and long-term goals, consider another excerpt from the same book. I quote, "The Russian people undoubtedly belong to the Messianic peoples. The Russian people is Russia today, but not as clearly outlined state, but as a geopolitical potential, real and concrete on the one hand, yet undefined in terms of its new state structure, ideology, and territorial limits." And later, there is a conclusion by Alexander Dugin, author of this textbook. I quote, "Therefore, today one should definitely say, not the Russian state, but the Russian Empire. The new empire should be Eurasian, highly continental, and in the future, worldwide. The battle for Russian world domination is not over." You know, after reading the statements, I gave you just one example of one textbook. There are many documents, many public statements by Russian officials, Putin itself, who said many times that Ukraine has no right to exist, that there is no such nation like Ukrainians. So analyzing, listening to all this, we have to understand that Russia's threat is existential to us, to Ukraine, to Lithuania, to Canada, even to United States. Because I truly believe the main target in maybe a longer future of Russia and other autocrats is not Ukraine, it's United States and other Western countries. Today's Russia, we should understand that it's a totalitarian, fascist country. People are very well brainwashed. Big percentage of Russian people, official statistics says 80%. Experts say that it's hard to believe official Russian statistics, but in fact, it's a huge percent of Russian people who truly, sincerely support Russia's genocidal war against Ukraine. So that is posing a real existential threat to us. So now when we gain this complete picture of our threats to our security posed by Russia, by other autocratic regimes, we clearly see that they are effectively uniting their efforts. By the way, you remember that before Russia's aggression against Ukraine, in the end of February 2022, a few weeks earlier, Russia and China signed this so-called no limits partnership agreement. I believe that was a very clear signal that China is fully supporting Russia's aggression against Ukraine. So having this picture, we have to react strongly and adequately. And in the end, I would like again to present some statistic figures I found very interesting. For example, again, some historic examples. Defense expenditures of United Kingdom in 1938, a year before the World War II, before Nazi Germany attack against Poland, was 3.75. In 1945, 52% of GDP. It's clearly demonstrated that it's better to be prepared. It's better to spend for your own security, for protection of your citizens enough, adequately, because if you are not prepared, you spend much more. And now, with regard to NATO allies' expenditures, in 1991, before collapse of Soviet Union, average percentage of defense expenditure of NATO allies was more or less 2.5%. Some of them spent more, some less, but average is more or less 2.5%. And following 3 decades, it was decreasing, and in 2014, probably again, like statistic average was 1.5. But if you look at Russia's defense expenditure, starting from 1990, 1991 to 2022, it always was more than 3.5%. And now it's I believe, more than 7. Some authors, experts say that maybe even 13%. So these figures sends us very clear message. You have to spend much more to your security, and in order to protect our people, in order to have a safe and secure future.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for your answer to that question. I know there was a lot there to unpack, but hopefully everybody got that, and we're very grateful for your comments on that. Our last moderated question for you is, I believe, one that's very timely and works with the new announcement. On February 8th, 2025, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia officially disconnected from the Russian-controlled Brel electricity grid, marking a significant step towards energy independence by integrating with the EU power network. This move strengthens regional security and reduces reliance on Russia's energy network, aligning with NATO's broader strategy of resilience against external pressures. The Baltic states' disassociation from the Russian Brel grid is a major milestone for regional energy security. What are your thoughts on how does this shift strengthen Lithuania's reliance against external threats? And what role do you see for NATO allies like Canada in supporting energy security as a strategic partnership?
Thank you very much. Very important and timely question. And again, let me begin with a brief historical introduction about our experience, about our lessons learned. When we regained independence 35 years ago, one of the biggest challenges for us was reducing economic and energy dependence on Russia. 35 years ago, we were 100% reliant on Russian oil and gas, to some extent electricity supplies, and Russia often used this dependency to either blackmail us or to impose enormous energy prices. Just 2 examples. In 1990, when we regained independence, first reaction from Moscow was 100% economic and energy blockade against Lithuania. Second example, in 2014, we paid the highest price in Europe, not in our region, but in Europe, for Russian natural gas, because we had no alternative. 100% supplies went from Russia. However, as I already mentioned, Lithuanians always have a vision, future vision, and we had a strategy. And what is also very important and determination to ensure our economic and energy security, and we have consistently moved in that direction. In 1999, we launched our offshore oil terminal, and in 2015, we established our national LNG floating terminal. That same year, we connected our electricity grid with Sweden and Poland, allowing us to import energy resources from other countries, enhance cooperation with like-minded nations in the energy sector, and significantly strengthen our energy security. Yet, the three Baltic states remained physically connected to the Russian electricity grid, and that was the last remnant of the Soviet occupation. When Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022, one of our decisive actions was to stop purchasing gas, oil, and electricity from the aggressor. Then, next step was, as you already mentioned, just a month ago, in the beginning of February, together with Latvia and Estonia, we finally physically disconnected from the Russian grid and synchronized our systems, electricity systems, with the Western electricity system. And I also would like to draw your attention that as energy security has always been a key topic on our Lithuanian strategic agenda, in 2010, we proposed to NATO allies to establish the NATO Energy Security Center of Excellence in Lithuania. This center began its operations in 2012 with strong support from Canada and other allies. Its mission is to help NATO allies and partners navigate the challenges of dynamic energy security environment, and one of the center's key partners is Ukraine, whose energy infrastructure is being attacked by Russia almost daily. The support of NATO member states in protecting and restoring Ukraine's energy infrastructure is crucial for the Ukrainian people, and we are going to continue supporting Ukraine in this regard.
Thank you so much for your incredible insights, Ambassador. We will now open the floor to questions from our live audience. I just want to be very cognizant of the time as well. For those watching, please continue to share your questions, and we'll address as many possible in the time remaining. There's one question here that I'm very interested in. Given the ongoing war, what specific steps do you believe NATO should take in 2025 to strengthen its support for Ukraine while maintaining alliance unity, especially in light of the current stance being taken by the US administration?
Thank you very much. As I already said, first of all, we have to continue and to enhance support to Ukraine, be it military, humanitarian, financial, economic support, because for us it's very clear. If we are not going to stop Russia in Ukraine, it will move forward. So now discussions, meetings on possibility of ceasefire and future peace agreement are going on. We will see. It's too early to comment, but two things are very clear. We have to achieve just peace. That means to protect from Ukraine from further Russian aggression against this sovereign country. And second thing, as I said, we have to finally invite Ukraine to NATO. With regard to further strengthening of NATO's defense capabilities, you probably hear that, listen to discussions that are right now ongoing in Europe, on further, further strengthening European defense capabilities. So that is crucial. We have to admit that for decades, I already presented some statistics. Europe, we have to admit, frankly, did not enough to strengthen its own defense capabilities. But now I believe we are moving in a very right direction, increasing defense expenditures, and let's hope that this year in NATO summit in The Hague in June, we will see good decisions in this regard.
Thank you for your answer, Ambassador. And it looks like this is all we have time for. So we wanted to express our deepest gratitude and sincerest thanks to you for your responses, your trust, and also your time. I'm going to now pass it on to President and CEO of the NATO Association of Canada, Robert Baines, for some closing remarks.
Thanks so much, Mary. And thank you, Antalya and James as well. Great moderation, and what a discussion. Excellency, what I loved about it above all was that despite the many numbers and figures and defense postures that are discussed, really at the heart of it all, as you mentioned in your opening remarks, is friendship. And I think you're right that is one of the best things that we have going for us in communicating the value of NATO and the whole rules-based international order. No matter how cynical people get, the simple act of friendship, of greeting each other, of standing together, laughing, having fun, and sharing the great cultural flourishing that's been possible from the amazing peace, stability, and security we've had for 80 years, that means something. And that's something that everybody can understand. And I'm just so thrilled that you were able to articulate that so well. And I look forward to having you at perhaps one of our future NATO beer festivals or one of our art events, where we are showing exactly what the output of peace and security is, which is our own flourishing, enjoying friendship and enjoying our families, our friends together. And that's really what's at the heart of it all. As much as we want to take a look at cynical ideas about what's going on internationally, really what we're here is to protect one another and to protect what we hold most dear. That's not something that's belligerent. That's not something that's conniving. That is something that's very real and very human. So thank you so much for joining us. And I hope we'll be able to put something on for you either here in Toronto or when we're in Ottawa next. We're really eager to make sure that all Canadians hear this message. Yeah, I really can't thank you enough.
Thank you very much. I really, as I said, I was very honored to meet with you online this time, to discuss with you. I enjoyed our discussion very much, and looking forward to continue our discussion, our cooperation. And as we already agreed, next time when I am in Toronto, I would be more than happy to meet with you and to continue to follow our discussion.
Indeed. And if you had, a 30-second quip to convince Canadians, what would you say to Canadians to remind them of the value of NATO?
As I already said, NATO historically is the best collective defense alliance which protected its members from various existential threats. So let's continue to strengthen our alliance, because I believe all we are looking for a safe future, secure future for us, for our children and for our grandchildren. And only we can do this by uniting our efforts.
Yeah, it's a very serious time. And thanks so much for joining us. Antalya, Mary, and James, great job. Those who are watching, please do, as I mentioned, join us on Facebook, LinkedIn, X, and Instagram, and definitely follow us on YouTube to hear more discussions like this. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the live stream is done. Great job, guys.
Thanks so much.